Throughout history, war has been an unrelenting force shaping civilizations. And behind every warrior's blade, every battle cry, and every victorious triumph stood a divine force, a god of war. In this episode of the Secret Pantheon, we uncover the deities who ruled over bloodshed and valor across the world. All over the world, people have traditionally invoked their gods before going to war and relied on divine assistance in battle. Unsurprisingly, many high gods, such as the Norse god Odin, are also gods of war. These gods were also inspirational. Odin inspired the Viking warriors through his runes, while Zeus could move men to bravery in battle. However, in many cultures there were specific gods of war, such as the Greek god Ares and the Roman god Mars. Atar was the god of war and protection in battle in ancient southern Arabia. Called "He who is bold in battle," the morning star was his consort. Vahagn was the Armenian sun god and god of war. He had hair of fire, a beard of flame, and eyes like suns. Goddesses, too, had a role in war. In ancient Canaan, Anat was the goddess of both fertility and war. She would adorn herself with rouge and henna, and then gleefully slaughter her enemies, cutting off their heads and hands before wading in their blood up to her knees. Andraste, or Invincible, was worshipped as the goddess of victory by the Iceni tribe of Celtic Britain. The Iceni leader Boudica sacrificed Roman women to her in a sacred grove. Before fighting, Boudica invoked Andraste and released a hare, her sacred animal. After a victory, Andraste was celebrated with sacrifices, feasting, and sexual license. The Aztecs developed a method of warfare known as flowery war, in which the object was to capture rather than slay the enemy. Those captured were then ritually sacrificed, and their still-beating hearts offered to the god Huitzilopochtli. There have been few cultures who have no words for war or quarrel, and whose myths reinforce a peaceful way of life. One notable exception is the Chewang people of Malaysia, whose society is rooted in non-violence. Their myths contain no legends of warfare, but instead reinforce egalitarian values. In one Chewang myth, the culture hero Yinlugan Bud teaches the most important rule of all: food must always be shared. Ares of ancient Greece. Ares, the strife-loving son of Zeus and Hera, was the Greek god of battle. However, in the Iliad, he sides with the Trojans against the Achaean Greeks, filling them with bravery, and on one occasion even fighting on their side. He was cruel and violent. His own father called him the most hateful of gods. Ares is considered to be similar to the Roman god Mars, although not his equivalent, being more brutal and less civilized. Ares was disliked because he gloried in fighting for its own sake. His unfortunate love of conflict was not accompanied by the strategic wisdom of Athena, and strangely for a war god, Ares is frequently depicted on the losing side of an argument. He was defeated by Athena, Diomedes, Heracles, and even Poseidon's sons Odos and Ephialtes, who imprisoned Ares in a bronze jar for 13 months, before Hermes, another son of Zeus, rescued him. Ares was the first being to be tried for murder, after he killed Poseidon's son, Halirrhothios, for forcing himself on his own daughter, Alcippes. He was tried and acquitted before a jury of 12 gods, on a hill to the west of the Acropolis in Athens, known as the Areopagus, where the Athenians later held all murder trials. Ares also fathered 3 children with Aphrodite: Harmonia, Phobos, and Deimos, aka Harmony, Terror, and Fear. But even his love for Aphrodite, who was married to Ares' brother, was a jealous love. When Aphrodite bore a daughter to Adonis, a prince of Kypros, Ares took the guise of a boar and gored him to death. Mars of ancient Rome. The god of war, Mars, son of the goddess Juno, was important in the Roman pantheon. As father of Romulus and Remus, the founders of Rome, he was one of the triad of supreme gods worshipped on Rome's Capitoline Hill, along with Jupiter and Quirinus, the Sabine war god. Mars was married to the goddess Nerio, which means strength, who is sometimes equated with the Roman goddess Bellona. Mars developed from an Etruscan god, Maris, whose role was more agricultural than military. Mars retained an association with agriculture, especially when worshipped as Mars Silvanus, or as Mars Pater, or Father Mars. As Mars Pater, he protected the crops from disease and bad weather, enabling them to grow and ripen. Mithras of ancient Rome, Persia. Mithras was a Persian god of light, and the relation of the Persian Mithra to Roman Mithras is controversial. Mithras, as the ruler of the cosmos, or the cosmocrator, was popular with Roman soldiers, who propagated his cult of Mithraism. In cave-like underground temples called Mithraea, found all over the Roman Empire, wherever the legions traveled, worshippers sacrificed bulls to Mithras. The god's alternative name, Sol Invictus, meaning unconquered sun, was a term for the Syrian sun god Elagabal. Mithraism was a mysterious religion, whose initiates were sworn to keep the secrets they learned as they passed through the 7 grades of initiation: Raven, Bridegroom, Soldier, Lion, Persian, Courier of the Sun, and Father. Each grade had its own protective deity and wore special clothes. A raven wore a raven-headed mask, under the protection of the god Mercury. Mithraism made a great use of astrology, and its protective gods are those associated with the planets. The Tauroctony seen in every Mithraeum was a coded image of the night sky, as Taurus set in the west for the last time before the spring equinox. Athena of ancient Greece, or Minerva of Rome. Wise Athena is the goddess of strategy and victory, and also of handicrafts. Zeus swallowed her mother Metis and the unborn Athena, and she was born from his head, springing out fully armed and shouting her war cry. In the Trojan War, she sided with the Achaeans. She also helped and supported heroes such as Perseus, Bellerophon, and above all, Heracles. The name of her mother, Metis, means intelligence, and Athena inherited her mother's wisdom. Her sacred bird was the owl. Nike of ancient Greece. The winged goddess Nike was said to be the daughter of the Titan Pallas and the Oceanid Styx. She helped the gods in their battle against the Titans, and Zeus made her goddess of victory as a reward. In Athens, she had her own temple on the Acropolis, where she was worshipped as an aspect of Athena. At Olympia, she was depicted in a colossal statue by Phidias as the companion of Zeus, dancing at his feet, while the god held a miniature Nike of ivory and gold in the palm of his hand. Castor and Pollux of ancient Rome, Greece. Castor and Pollux were the Roman names for a pair of twins who originated in Greek mythology. They were identified with the Penates, the gods of the household, and with the Kabiri, Phrygian gods of fertility and the protection of sailors. Castor and Pollux, the Dioscuri, are usually thought to have been fathered by Zeus in the form of a swan, on Leda, the queen of Sparta, and then hatched from an egg. However, some sources claim that Castor was in fact the son of Tyndareus, king of Sparta, and was therefore mortal, while Pollux is immortal. After death, the brothers shared the one immortality between them, being alive and then dead on alternate days. Renowned as boxers and horsemen, they are often portrayed mounted. The Dioscuri were patrons of the Roman cavalry. Their sisters were Clytemnestra and Helen of Troy. Tyr of Norse mythology. Tyr was the Norse god of war. Our word Tuesday recalls his earlier incarnation as the Germanic war god Tiw, or Tiwaz. In Norse mythology, Tyr is eclipsed in importance by Odin, whose Valkyries, the choosers of the slain, ride into battle and allot victory or defeat. Tyr was the only god brave enough to feed the terrible wolf Fenrir, and sacrificed his sword hand so that the monster could be bound. His noble act will lead to his death at the last battle of Ragnarok. Celtic Mars of Celtic mythology. Many of the Celtic peoples of the Roman Empire worshipped Mars, but this god differed from the Roman Mars. The Celtic Mars was a much less warlike being than his classical counterpart. He was associated with the goose, a bird that was seen as a protector because of its alarm call, and he was also worshipped as a god of healing. He was part of a group of native Celtic deities that included the hunting god Cosidius, the horse god Rudiobus, and the healing gods Mullo, Nodons, and Oludius. The Morrigan of Celtic Ireland. The Morrigan was the early Irish goddess of war who, instead of fighting in person, changed the outcome of a conflict by appearing on the battlefield and terrifying one side or the other, either with her fearsome looks or by casting spells. Her warlike qualities were linked in a powerful way with her sexuality. The Morrigan was associated with several goddesses, including the war deities Bodbi and Macha, who either form a kind of martial trinity with her or appear as aspects of the Morrigan herself. The sinister Morgan Le Fay of Arthurian legend may also be considered as one of her aspects by some. A prolific shape-changer, the Morrigan often appeared as a crow, arriving to prophesy the outcome of a war or descending onto a battlefield to peck at the corpses. The Irish banshee, envisaged as a sinister woman washing bloody garments at a ford, also derives from the Morrigan. She allied herself to different sides in different wars. For example, after sleeping with the Dagda, she agreed to take the side of the Tuatha De Danann, a magical people, at the Battle of Mag Tuired, chanting spells that drove the Fomware into the sea. However, in a later conflict, she was a supporter of the men of Connaught. Durga of India, the great goddess Devi in her warlike incarnation is called Durga, a name that means impenetrable or hard to approach. She is portrayed as an attractive woman, but she rides a big cat as a reminder that she defeats demons. Durga can emerge from the gentle goddess Parvati when she is angry, or she can appear when several gods combine their power. This happens when the stability of the cosmos is threatened by demons. On one occasion, a group of gods called the Devas were harassed by a demon called Mahisha, who disguised himself as a buffalo. When the Devas told Siva and Vishnu about the problem, the two gods grew angry, which made Durga appear. Mahisha kept changing shape, from buffalo to man to lion to elephant, but Durga defeated him. With her foot on his neck, she forced the spirit from his mouth and cut off his head. As he died, all the gods and all the creatures of the world shouted, "Victory!" Skanda of India. The six-headed Skanda is the Hindu god of war. In different Vedic texts, he is said to be the son of either Agni or Siva. He was brought up by the Kritikas, the 6 stars of the Pleiades. He was often tasked with fighting evil demons, such as the demon Taraka, whom he killed with weapons made from the sun's rays. Guan of China. Guan started out as a humble seller of bean curd, but became one of the famous brothers of the Peach Orchard, a trio of adventurers similar to the Three Musketeers. Guan was considered such a military hero that in 1594, during the Ming Dynasty, he was officially elevated to the rank of war god. Soldiers in particular venerated him, but he continued to be the patron of bean curd sellers. Hachiman of Japan. Hachiman was a fertility god who granted children to his devotees and encouraged the growth of their crops. As well as being a protector of agriculture, he was also the defender of Japan, and so became god of war. In the native Shinto religion of Japan, Hachiman is seen as a historical figure who was deified. He began life as the Emperor Ojin, who died around 394 CE. Ojin was renowned as a military leader and was said to have been able to influence the tides to throw invading ships off course. When the Minamoto clan, hero Yoshiie and his soldiers were dying of thirst, he prayed to Hachiman before shooting an arrow into a rock and was rewarded with an inexhaustible fountain of water. One of Japan's most popular gods, Hachiman is also a divinity within Buddhist belief. Ziyu of China. One of the culture heroes of China, Ziyu was the first metalworker. He used his ability to shape metal to make the first weapons and armor, and so became the primeval Chinese god of war. He is portrayed as a fearsome creature with the head, horns, and hooves of a bull. which are so strong that they seem to be made of metal. Zu was said to show his strength by eating pebbles. He was prone to terrifyingly violent rages, during which he attacked his enemies by butting them with his horns. Huitzilopochtli of Aztec mythology. Huitzilopochtli was the chief cult god of the Aztecs, a deity of sun and fire who demanded human hearts as nourishment. Huitzilopochtli led the Aztecs in war in order that they might capture sacrificial victims to feed his hunger. Born like Athena, fully armed, Huitzilopochtli's first act was to kill and dismember his sister, Coyolxauhqui, who was plotting to kill their mother. His cult center was Tenochtitlan, where a double pyramid comprised his great temple, together with that of Tlaloc, the god of rain and lightning. Morning Star of Native American mythology. Morning Star is the most powerful of all the beings placed in the sky by the creator Tirawahat, the sun. He is dressed like a warrior, painted with red dust and carrying a war club. When a Pawnee war chief was dressed by a priest in the ceremonial regalia of war, he was imitating Morning Star and asking his blessing. In historical times, the Pawnee sacrificed girls to Morning Star at the culmination of a 4-day ritual. The girl was made to face east, toward the Morning Star, then shot repeatedly with arrows. Sekhmet of ancient Egypt. When humankind plotted against the sun god Ra, he sent his eye in the form of the goddess Hathor to exact vengeance. The peaceful Hathor transformed into the lion-headed Sekhmet, who laid waste to humankind in an ecstasy of slaughter. When Sekhmet awoke the next day, Ra made her drunk with beer mixed with red ochre to look like blood, sating her bloodlust and saving humanity. 2. Of Polynesian mythology. 2. Ku in Hawaii, one of the sons of Rangi and Papa, sky and earth, is the Polynesian god of war, known as Tu of the Angry Face. His name means both to stand and to strike. Human sacrifices were made to him. In his most warlike aspect, Tu or Ku was known as Ku Kaili Moku. The wooden image of this god, with a headdress of yellow feathers, was said to utter cries that could be heard over the sound of the fighting when carried into battle. The traditional Haka war dance, in which the dancers imitate Tu, has been adopted by the All Blacks rugby team and New Zealand soldiers. In Maori myth, Tu's warlike nature is evident at an early stage, when he suggests to his brothers that they kill their parents even before he and his brothers are born. His youngest brother, Tauhiri Matea, decides to stay with his mother, the earth, and becomes buried under her stomach to become the god of earthquakes and storms. Tu is the only god to withstand his attacks, and thus considers his other brothers to be his inferiors. To demonstrate his loss of respect for them, he begins using their children, the fish, the birds, the plants that grow from the land, as food and materials, and in doing so, he allows humankind to do the same. Thus he became also a god of husbandry and abundance. Tu or Ku is a complex god, and his responsibilities are wide. He is also a god of sorcery and of healing. In Hawaii, Ku was the principle of male generative power, paired with Hina, the principle of female fecundity. The rising sun is known there as Ku, and the setting sun as Hina. From the brutal fury of Ares to the wisdom of Athena, from the warrior's honor of Tyr to the divine strategy of Guan, each war god tells a story of their people's ideals. Some glorified war, others saw it as a necessary evil, yet they all remain eternal symbols of power, strategy, and the indomitable human spirit. Who among these gods of war would you call upon in battle? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the Secret Pantheon. Until next time.